The film produced by Pınar, Dinç, Gürler and Burçin Sönmez, which is called Criticizing Architecture via Filming, is originally scheduled at 5:30, but as one of the authors of this presentation is Pınar Dinç is going to present her other work in this session. We have decided to combine them, and Pınar Dinç is going to present her work as the last presenter in this session, and then afterwards we will show the movie Criticizing Architecture via Film. That was the first announcement. In this session, Ebru, Erbaş, Gürler and Başak, Özer are going to present their work called Daily Landscapes as a part of urban identity and memory. Then Larisa Brojan, she is going to present her work Ecological Design, which is a case study of a straw bale house in Slovenia. And then Yasmine Sinno and Ameer Saad, they are going to present their work together called On the Way to Home, Entry to a Houseless Dweller. And as last, Pınar Dinç is going to present her work called House and Housing in Architectural Education. 2 levels, 2 approaches. So, thanks again.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ebru Gürler. I'm a landscape architect and work as a lecturer in Istanbul Technical University landscape architecture department. And I prepared this work with my colleague Başak Özer. And our topic is today daily landscapes as a part of urban identity and memory. So in this term, I'm going to explain at first the concept of the everyday landscape, and I will give some examples about the cases and how we use everyday landscapes in environmental design. So, every landscape is the landscape of people's close surrounding, where their everyday and individual activities happen and constitutes instant and ordinary life without any dramatic presentation. Straw bales in the fields, undesigned domestic gardens, terraces and balconies, invented plant pots, laundry rows between blocks or houses, temporary street performance, everyday activities in living environments. Such spontaneous landscapes in cities or rural areas are the reflection of the living styles of societies, and they have also significant cultural value, as well as the typical cultural landscapes, such as historical design and rural. So, actually, the typical cultural landscape concept has undergone a change by the 90s due to the institutionalization for adoption of World Heritage Convention. So, with this term, the discourse started to focus on preservation planning and design rather than ordinary environments. Rather than a part of the everyday life, typical cultural landscape concept is now the realm of professional practice. So the current discourse and practice of cultural landscape has lost its connection to everyday. So actually, with the Lefebvre ideas, so Lefebvre identified the concept of everyday life in 1925 as everyday life in urban manner. He emphasized the relationship between theory and lived experience, and considered everyday life more significant than work itself in determining experience and social transformation. With the growing interest of Lefebvre's ideas among American architects in the second half of the 1990s, emerged the everyday urbanism movement. So everyday urbanism supporters believe that lived experience or real life of the city should be more important than the defining the city with just physical form. So they consider the city as a social product and believe that it's created by demands of everyday. So daily landscape patterns and rituals are the important part of the everyday spaces. They refer to history, and labor of those who created these landscapes and also represent the visual experience. The local vocabularies of places which create landscapes, memory and narrative are the considerable part in the case of constitution and place identity. They strengthen the visual and narrative's memory of a place. So narrative's construction by everyday landscapes play an important role in constituting the urban memory and identity. The place identity and the character become stronger with narration, and in this way, more genuine and real spaces could emerge. One of the solutions for the problem of uniformity increasing by globalization should create design proposals for supporting these quotidian productions. So, how everyday landscapes could be a design matter? How these daily, ordinary and spontaneous productions could find a place in the global design world. So the texture, think about the texture of the ritual and custom works, the texture of daily activities and routines, the texture of terraces, balconies, fountain, etc. So despite all of them are simple, incidental and spontaneous and undesigned, they have significant cultural value. Front gardens, entrances, doors and gates, borders and fences are the interfaces that have ritual functions, and they are representative. Terraces, roofs and balconies are also gathering places where customs and rituals born in. So all such places seem to be quite ordinary in our daily life. They are also our closest surrounding and deserve a consideration in environmental design due to the way of creation by culture. So the texture of these small nearest outdoor spaces are characterized by a site-specific composition and identical around the world. They are created by spontaneous inventions and have spatial textures, routines and cultural meanings. Then how do everyday landscapes, including design practice? So 101 urban salvations, kind of example of these concepts. So it's a project consists of various proposals developed for Cambridge by Harvard Graduate School of Design students for making the Cambridge city more livable. So the students interviewed 400 residents about their lives and experience city and asking them to complete the sentences. Cambridge would be a better place to live if. Students translated their responses into 101 ideas that could be implemented. So the study intentionally avoided the abstract tools typically used by planners. Instead, they focus on the more uncertain realm of subjective experience. One of them of the projects was a proposal suggested building rooftop additions on commercial property, adding density to existing buildings. And the other one is for a greener Cambridge. Students propose electrical car couplets and half clubs that generate electricity from cardio work. So another one focuses on adding more green roofs in Cambridge, cut the emissions to zero, install more solar power and use vacant land to the side, little urban forests for providing a different spatial experience. Other alternatives propose a variety of changes for Cambridge, including more food trucks, rooftop farms, and bank lobbies transformed into e-zones with laptops. So, further question may be what kind of environments could be a potential place and offer opportunities for these valuable quotidian productions. So, in this term, all Bosphorus settlements in Istanbul, on the coastal part, are the potential environments for everyday landscapes, owing to their multi-ethnic history, small-scale neighborhood landscapes, historic backgrounds, and their continued close social ties. These old neighborhoods, called as mahalle in Turkish, from the period of Ottoman Empire with their nostalgic images, reflect the daily lives of the inhabitants. The mahalle, where the core of intimate everyday life, is the best place of narrative creations. The common outdoor spaces of mahalle are the daily stages for carrying narratives that form place memory over time. This place memory is one of the essential mediums that tell Istanbul and provide the functionalize it and deliver these stories told from generation to generation. The description of old Istanbul by former citizens is often done through these daily landscapes. This kind of cultural landscapes in everyday life help depicting the living environments in memories and thus the transfer of them to the next generation occurs. One of the Bosphorus settlements, Kuzguncuk is one of these settlements on Asian shore of Istanbul, known for its small-scale environment, its close neighborhood relations, social connections, historical pattern, and also its multi-ethnic history. So, owing to the spatial urban pattern and the social life of Kuzguncuk, the neighborhood has come to represent an attachment to place in our cosmopolitan city of Istanbul. Because of this kind of social and physical structure of Kuzguncuk, it's the place of everyday landscapes. As a result, the creation of narratives increases and place identity and cultural memory are formed. So, today, unfortunately, in our general environments, the concept of globalization has been transforming even daily landscapes, which are strongly rooted in the socio-cultural structure of the society and local characteristics of places. Consequently, the local characters of places are becoming more uniform. This situation causes a uniform language and disrupts the unique character of landscape and urban that is site-specific and society-specific. The final product, the living environment of the 21st century occurs as a flattened image, where all the layers which enrich the local identity become the same and one. And nowadays, inhabitants who especially live in Istanbul's new gated communities with the luxury and exported landscapes, what will they tell the future generations as narrative? Could daily landscapes survive opposite the sterile environments formed with globalized landscapes? So in most recent examples of gated communities are shaped by global images as marketing strategies. The clients want to reach a high quality visual outdoor image. On the contrary of all Bosphorus settlements, the lack of neighborhood, intimate social life and close ties in these sites cause a demand for visual landscape more than a livable landscape. The physical structure of these sites is one of the important reasons that do not make them attachment to place. Therefore, the perfect landscape images of the gated communities don't provide a living street life, intimate spaces, and familiarity. So, although these enclosed sites have their own design, the good design language in themselves, they don't have a certain identity due to their non-integrated structure of the surrounding environment, and they offer artificial outdoor living, and they don't generate an urban and cultural memory. Their physical structures don't make possible real outdoor life and the production of everyday landscapes. So the offered lives in these images for marketing don't actualize in real life. So the neighborhood pattern enable the improvisational generations and opportunities for spontaneous contact with other people. So, as a discussion, how does design connect to everyday life? The connection must start with understanding the city from different points of view. The everyday landscape patterns as a result of the experience of daily life and rituals that take place there should considered as a worldwide matter in environmental design. As we deal with the clearly defined design and planning principles, we overlook real life and everyday city. Designers and planners must not only focus on physical design and social, politics and economical aspect of it, but also should engage with the nature of the city and its experiences. The familiarity lays on the everydayness. Unconscious patterns could be also subject of conscious design. As well as considering daily life productions as a design matter, designers also could create potential places for offering more intimate spaces. For granted, these kind of textures, small and literal textures, could provide more attachment to places. So, As an example, two projects of the landscape design studio in Istanbul Technical University Landscape Architecture Department could be an example of this kind of efforts. So the first one is, two of them was about Kuzguncuk, one of the old Bosphorus neighborhoods. So this one is the aim to strengthening and displaying the Mahalli life, I mean neighborhood life, and strong social connections. So for this reason, students create structures spread out different places in the neighborhood was so to increase the accidental meetings and provide alternative meetings in the neighborhood and alternative activity places in the neighborhood. So the other one is aim to actually enliven the Kali art in Turkish Bostan culture that is part of the everyday landscape production in the past in Kuzguncuk. So Kuzguncuk Park was selected as appropriate design area to create these bostans for also including children to this kind of life, provide them an experimental environment and give them environmental awareness. So in this context, one of the tasks of environmental design is a conclusion. Design professions should understand of the local potentials of the site, considering narratives and memories, and regarding the potentials as a tool of protecting and recovering their landscape character. So designers and planners should encourage individual and community expression. Thank you.
Larisa Brojan, so she asked me if I can present it for her. Her contribution to the ARCHTHEO conference is a paper entitled Ecological Design with Focus on Case Study of a Straw Bale House in Slovenia. I will read it through because she really prepared a nice paper. So let's go. In the beginning, I will tell you some general facts about straw bales and building with it. It has been used as a building material for thousands of years, either as an additive to clay or mud building techniques to improve strength of material, or as a layer in the form of thatch. The most common picture of building with straw is self-builders architecture, whose approach towards building is strong ecological orientation, meaning in the extreme cases the use of no electricity demanded tools. Result is an organic shaped building. On the other hand, straw can be applied to modern architectural plans because of its adaptability and applicability as building material. Many straw bale buildings around the world present a variety of design solutions in combination with other materials like timber, clay, or in combination with materials forming modern architecture like steel, concrete, and glass. Many examples can be seen all over the world. The advantage of straw bale as building material is the accumulation of carbon dioxide and its low embodied energy. These properties significantly affect the characteristically lower energy consumption. As demonstrates, the figure on display straw is a side product of growing cereals, and it is practically unlimited and assured annually, and therefore providing raw materials straw has no environmental impact. The main topic of this presentation is focused on a single-family home positioned in a smaller town named Radomlje in Slovenia. Case study of single-family house is certainly an example environmental-friendly project, mainly using materials with low embodied energy. Timber and straw bales were provided by local craftsmen Clay was provided on location itself. Building dimensions in simply designed floor plan of discussed house are 10.10 meters by 7.75 meters. Total usable floor area is 129 square meters in 2 levels. Volume required for heating is 510 cubic meters. The house has gable roof with a slope of 43 degrees. In building documentation are presented several data about operated energy. This is like primary energy for building operation, emissions of carbon dioxide, renewable energy for building operation. Section of house is also simple, like said, with roof slope 43 degrees. Here can be mentioned that one thermal transfer calculation revealed that U values are significantly below the required value for Slovenia, which is 1.28. Regarding energy sufficiency code of Slovenia, table shows value of thermal conductivity for each composite structure: exterior wall, ground floor, roof, ceiling, and roof. As submitted in project documentation, all calculated values are much below required level. Elevation of discussed house, can be seen, okay, maybe this is envelope. It can be noticed from plan reading where is south, north, east, and west. Windows openings were designed to gain as much as possible sun during the winter time. So this is the process of building of studied house. More pictures. The plan was to calculate the embodied energy. Assessment of embodied energy rating was categorized where amount of embodied energy is defined in 6 levels, with a minimum as very low in green color and maximum as extremely high, red, as seen on the screen. In this research, first all materials used to build the discussed house were listed in accordance with positions of use. Shown in the table, the example of listing the source of the material, its approximately value, volume, and energy rating being allocated to each material in accordance to mentioned categorization. Regarding the categorization of light and materials, approximate estimation of energy use per each rating level is calculated and compared mutually as reviewed. The total volume of materials is approximately 235 cubic meters, in which strongly dominates use of materials with low embodied energy. In the shown table is summarization of the energy rating of materials used to build the discussed house. Results presented are significantly affected by selection of straw bale as infill material. To get a clearer picture what these results represent, we did a comparison between a straw bale wall to brick wall. Starting point was the same thickness to assure same volume as seen from table. The figures demonstrate use of energy by ranking scale already presented. Table shows 2 walls material composition with an equal volume, area of 1 square meters and 50 centimeters thickness of construction materials. The first wall, straw bale wall, and the second is brick wall with EPS isolation. Figure reveals that straw wall contains 99% of materials with low embodied energy and less than 1% of materials with medium embodied energy. Compared to brick wall, contains 79% of materials with high embodied energy and less than 1% of materials with medium embodied energy, and approximately 20% of materials with very low embodied energy. It means that from the ecological point of view, building with straw has lower impact on the environment. Word for the end. Future design aims towards environmental friendly ecological design. Focus on this presentation was on a single house case study where categorization of used materials was made in accordance to energy rating embodied energy. Straw bale and timber therefore represent a major opportunity to reduce annual CO2 emissions from housing construction and operation. By using straw bale and timber, to sequester CO2 in combination with technologies to reduce the use of grid energy. Houses can be made to be as absorbers of CO2, achieving an essential feature of sustainability. So thank you for your attention.
Hello, my name is Yasmine Sinno. I'm a doctoral student at ETH Zurich in Switzerland, and this is Ameer Saad.
I'm a graduate from the Politecnico di Milano. Just got my master's degree from there in 2011, and got my bachelor degree from Cairo University, and I'm an independent researcher in architecture.
We're gonna discuss the idea of house and home in relation to one type of dweller, who's out of house but within home fulfilling, and that's the houseless person. So we started our interest in the house and home idea from the point of view of the notions of appropriation, materiality, and identification. Identification with a certain space and identification with your own self. And we thought of taking the homeless people as a case study because this would help us put aside the idea of physical home versus mental home, and in order to focus more on how the mental construct of a person works, rather than keep on focusing on is home a place or is home a mindset. And looking into the homeless people and how they dwell within the city, it gives us a new idea of how the idea of home is not just a physical construct or a mind construct, but it's also a set of journey and a home within a bigger context, which is the city and even more on a globalized version. Looking into the houseless people or the homeless, and we're going to discuss the difference between homeless and houseless, we have to look into the spaces that they dwell into, and those are interstitial spaces, and we're going to discuss also at some point what's the meaning of interstitiality. So the three case studies that we're going to focus on in order to explain all that is on one side the St. Jude and the St. Paul areas near the center of Bristol in the UK. There's the Yogyakarta in Indonesia, and the third is the Tambalile, Johannesburg. First we're gonna discuss different points of views and different notions, and at the end slowly we're gonna see the link between the different ones. So from one side there's the homeless lifestyle. First, a general understanding of what we found through the case studies. Instead of thinking of a homeless person as one roaming entity in an urban space, we think of a homeless lifestyle as a person that ends up being regrouped into communities and subcultures. It becomes patterns that are alternative within the city, and those people at some point become entities and subcultures. At some point they become sub-societies, and the way these are being created are not through social strata or capitalist thinking. It's rather on an idea of the activities that they would like to share, and it's very time related. So the way they create and recreate their subcultures is by what at a certain point in the day they would like to do, and how they would assimilate themselves at a certain point in time, be it during the day or in in a monthly pattern, how they would associate with others of their same pattern of life. Homeless lifestyle also is related to notions of invisibility and spaces income. On one side, invisibility, as you can imagine, it's how to keep your how to sustain a certain way of living that is not accepted by the general mass, but at the same time sustain yourself and live within the same urban fabric that sustains those masses. In this point of view, you come in relation with different types of spaces. So as a homeless person, you end up stratifying where you can go, where you cannot go, and it's always related to accessibility to services. It's also related to how you feel at home in different places of the city. And it's a different way of viewing what is private, what is public, what is semi-private. It's also a different way of viewing what is home, what is public. And through these re-understanding of what the spaces that we commonly understand, the spaces start having a strata. And from the way they describe those spaces, some places are considered nice, some places are considered okay, and some places are considered just avoidable. And it's not from point of view of usual person who has a home, but it's from point of view of someone who already is out of the equation. At this point of view, we should talk about the spaces in which they dwell, and
the point of this, the very first topic of the subject is quite important to understand the context of what we're going to discuss. Understanding homeless communities, they got different auras and they got different interests, they got different patterns of their life. So, for example, the idea of invisibility is very important for the homeless community, because usually, since they are connected to the service centers of the city, so for example, they are connected to places of income. What are the places of income? Places of income is places where they can beg there, they can get a meal there, they can find a drop-in center there where they can wash their clothes for free, according to for example, one of the case studies that we have. So the concentration will be around some specific areas depending on their needs in this area. So, for example, this kind of location around the central prime spaces of the city. The other thing would be, for the same reason, because of this availability around the same central area of the city of prime spaces, they have to be invisible, so that the image of the city must be maintained. So, for example, the center of the city is a kind of place where you have the highest economic processes going, and then you have the tourism is going there. So it is important for the authorities to maintain this central area clean, not invaded by homeless people. So when they go through these areas to their income spaces or similar things, they have to be in a way invisible. And the same thing when they have to sleep, they have to be in a way invisible. So this is one very important thing to consider when we speak about the homeless communities.
So talking about interstitiality. So interstitial, it's a form, it's a notion, and you can divide the word into inter and sistere, which means spaces in between, spaces that fall out of the norm of the city, and it's related to the notion of terrain vague, which some of you may know. Terrain vague, as stated first in the 1995 by Ignacio de Sola Morales, in the context of these spaces that are either in the periphery or also in the center of the city, where there's potential for change, and there's potential for ambiguity, and there's potential for blurry boundaries. And homeless people dwell in those spaces because it gives them the opportunity to be invisible, as we had mentioned, and it gives them the opportunity to try to find their own understanding and their own creation of what the spaces, what the urban spaces in the city are. And it's a rising notion since the 90s, the notion of interstitiality, because it's also related to this, this lack of the defragmentation of the city and the creation of overlapping of spaces. Also, interstitiality, it's a matter of perspective. So it's the same urban fabric can be viewed in many different ways, and interstitiality is a way to view the voids within the network. And they can be viewed. It's not a static in between that is all equal, and it's not a black and white pattern as lots of urban configurations seem, but it's more of viewing what's the grade scale and how it's about time management and how it's about journeys that happen within the city. So these spaces can go from very public to even very private, and the semi-public, semi-private in between. Within these spaces, there's the houseless dwellers that can use these differentiations in order to create their own paths. And there are many types of spaces, so those interstitial spaces can move from being leftover houses, and the notions of uncanny and magical realism can go back to the surface, or it can be more spaces that have already been adopted by certain communities, and some are illegally occupied. And there are two ways of viewing such spaces. Either we can focus on the threshold and thinking about borders and limits and all these notions of how to cross from inside outside and how to cross from public and private. And this approach can be called the liminal. And it has also characters. So in novels and in movies, you can hear a lot being written about the liminal characters, so are outside the usual mainstream characters, but then fall within the usual characters of what a city can withhold. And on the other side, you can think about interstitial as a way to view these spaces from within. So there's focus on programs, there's focus on how we can use the space itself rather than focus on this transition between what is inside, what is outside. And also thinking about these spaces, the difference between what we call the terrain vague and the difference between what we call liminal or interstitial, it's also a matter of scale. So you can see within the periphery there's large spaces where people can, where it's a much larger scale and it has different notions of density and temporality. Whereas within the center of the city, these spaces can go into very minute spaces and they can show a different layering of the city. So for example, when there's a grid and then you cut a diagonal through it, like in Barcelona, this Avenida Diagonal can cut through and cause triangular shapes within the urban fabric. And these are also interstitial because they are left out from the normal fabric, and those are also places where the houseless dwell. So these differentiations between those interstitial spaces can give us lots of ideas on how to not think of them as just a black background, and how to reimagine how the houseless are not just people trying to figure out a way in the city, but are actually, it's a much bigger dynamic that's going on. One of the main points of this topic is how dweller appropriates space. So in this point, from this point of view, there are two main points. There's appropriation on one side, and then there's border and transition on the other. From the point of view, from the notion of appropriation, we can start seeing that this transition, this journey is happening with a very, very, very big notion of time. So ephemerality gives way for such urban dwellings to happen. There's the notion that the same space can be public, the same space can turn private for these dwellers at a certain point in time. And these ephemeral movements and dynamics happen through an idea of resistance and through an idea of an urban power relation. So there's the dweller on one side, and he has to, there's the houseless dweller, he has to face the mass, he has to face the organization, he has to face the urban, the governmental structures. And all of this can turn into different types of active involvement. All this recreation of boundaries and recreation of transitional journey happens through this active involvement through time of those dwellers. And
to try to demonstrate these points that we were discussing about just in the slide before that, in the appropriation case, we try to project that on the case studies we have. So we have some quite interesting case studies in different cases in the city of Bristol, and the other cases would be also quite important, so I think you would enjoy them. One of the case studies in Bristol was discussing it's all about interviewing homeless people. So I'm going to quote parts of the interviews with homeless people there. So, for example, this is quite an interesting quotation. It's one of the homeless people in these areas of St. Paul and St. Jude. He calls a specific squad there. It's a disused building that used to be 2 houses. It has been knocked down into 1 house, and it's quite a nice squat. The second video from the top is the entry point. They have got a ladder, they bring it out, and they get you in. There is a lot of prostitution going on in there. Clients get taken there, ladder in all, they get sorted out as a different room. So this is quite an interesting thing of the appropriation of a squatted building. So it's knocked down buildings, but they managed to appropriate their use to that building. So they quite claim kind of ownership to that building. So they control the entry with having the entry point on some kind of second floor, second window from the top, and they even control it in a higher level when they keep the ladder inside, so that they make sure they get into the spot that they want to, the people who work in, they want to bring in. It's interesting also that although it is not just a squat, it's kind of a place for prostitution and this kind of economy, they managed to do some kind of management to that place, so they appropriated the place for the guests to work Then for the other case of Johannesburg, we would have quite also an interesting case when the case of Johannesburg is quite interesting, because the people come out from formal housing areas and they go make their own squat camp. They have, in the formal houses, they have their own formal housing unit, they have their own access to all services, but they leave all that and they go to squats in an open space, and then they all gather together, and then we will say why in the next point we are going to discuss. But when they go there, they manage to make some kind of general rules that the expansion of the squat is going to follow. So, for example, no one is going to get into the squat as just a go, some kind of squat, they go there and they make their shack and they sit in it. No, they have to be someone who's related to one family inside that squat. So it's kind of management. They try to control that squat. They are maintaining straight lines and straight roads, straight different fabrics, so that they can manage the expansion of the squat, and they try to make it always accessible. So this is also quite an interesting point for the appropriation of a bigger scale. and also the utilization of family ties in order to control the new squatted area.
So, as I said, there's another point which is boundary and transition. Boundary and transition gives us an idea of, according to what I have already spoken about interstitiality, gives us an idea of how boundaries, if you view the space from a liminal point of view or from an interstitial point of view, it changes how you can use the space and how the dwellers use the space. So there's an interest of architects in this point of view, and there's also the interest of the dynamics of these dwellers. It's also when we think about these boundaries and when we think about this, how houseless people become houseless, we have to go back to the starting point in the psychology of these people, and we have to go back into the theoretical background of this differentiation between private and public. It all comes back down to the initial point where, as DAKAM explains it, as the mirror phase between who is you and who's the public. So there's this, at this point, at the very, very early childhood, where the child looks at himself in the mirror and realizes there's himself and then there's the outside world. And from this point on, we start differentiating between private and public. And after differentiating between private and public, the person realizes that he needs a self-identity, and he needs an identity of a self, and he needs an identity of what is outside of him and what is the other. And viewing the homeless case studies, we realize that this boundary between what is self and what is outside is getting blurred. It's not just the blurring of the actual physical urban space between what is private and what is public, but what is also within the person, what is him and what is another. And also looking at the case studies, we're going to discuss more.
Okay, for the case studies, we figured out that a couple of ways the boundaries appear within the private, between the private and the public. What is home and what is not home in the homeless society. As we said earlier, in the homeless lifestyle, the concerns that they have, which we don't experience quite, makes that quite evident. So, for example, given the problem is that they have all kinds of homeless people there. So we got just the people who lost their house because they cannot pay the rent, and you got the people who got who's just alcoholic and they got themselves in some kind of problem. They got expelled out of the homes, and there are people who are in even a worse case, which are going into drug gangs and they're dealing with drugs, and which is, for the homeless community, the drug people are quite the most dangerous parts, the most dangerous communities, the most dangerous class they want to avoid. So, for example, in this area, for example, I'm going to quote a little sentence of a homeless person who was trying to reach one of the formal shelters, which of course should have been temporary shelters for homeless people, but then it transforms to be permanent shelter. In the city of Bristol, there are shelters for homeless people so that they can go there for one night until they find a place to stay. So in that, some of these shelters in these areas of St. Paul and St. Jude, for a homeless person to go to that shelter, he tries to get to certain areas in the properties. So here one person is struggling. First of all, you have to go to the square where you can see. And once you have got in there to the square, you have a few little corners where drug dealers are standing. Then you've got to go around and go. Sorry. Then you still got to go around the other corner right in front, where the big drug problem is, to get into the shelter. This same shelter is one of the, in other quotes, is called one was calling it, this is a nightmare I hate, so I would prefer to be in prison instead of going to that shelter. So in this way we find that there are some boundaries in the urban space where homeless people try to avoid, so that in that area is dangerous, this area is out of my regular routine areas, and the other areas can be passable. I can pass there and then I can feel okay. Another kind of boundary can happen when speaking about social and ethnic, I mean, gender, I would rather put it in the gender boundary or ethnic boundary. So, for example, we have in this the same case study of Turkey, we have some cases where we have loads of Somali, as one of the persons quote. There are lots of Somalians there, that just the women, they have no idea where the men are. And then when interviewing one of these Somalis, he states that the Somalians in the hostel tend to stick together, partly because they have little in common with the druggies, but more importantly because of the proverb, Somalian proverb, of the Somalian proverb, which basically states that you are what you hang out with. So in this sense, we have kind of a boundary defined through sticking together. If you don't stick together as an ethnic group, like the Somalians do, then you start getting into trouble. In another case, in the city of Yogyakarta, in Indonesia, it's where the gender is the boundary, where the gender composes the boundary. So in the city of Yogyakarta, our reference there was speaking about high male dominancy in the street culture. So for a homeless female to be in the streets is quite dangerous. It's quite unsafe. So in that case, we start to find this kind of phenomenon that is female gangs. So females start to try to shape their own boundary by sticking together. If you go outside, then you have to have someone to protect you with, so a boyfriend or something. But then our study that is discussing this issue is speaking about the behavior of street girls in their spaces. In their spaces, meaning they defined already spaces where girls only go, where street boys don't go there. So boys have their own urban spaces where they stay and have their injections and all this kind of stuff, and other spaces where street girls gather together, and when they are in this space, this is a quotation from the study, when they are in this space, their behavior was very different from when they were in the street boys spaces, as they were far more vocal, gregarious, and confident. So this, in a way, defines a kind of boundary that defines. And also there is another point where in that same place, which is called DAKAM, it's a part in a park in the city of Yogyakarta. They keep the girl stuff. They keep it in the house, in a small hut at the entrance of the park. So they start also not just appropriating the park. They are trying to also put some place only for themselves. They are putting their own belongings there together as a girl group. You can go for it.
Okay, we've already talked about this one. So, as a conclusion, there are 4 points we have to clarify. Is on one side, there's the home as a transitional journey, and on one side, there's the fragility of boundaries. There's the repetitive performance of habits through time, and it's an ongoing creation of patterns.
Hello, I'm Pınar Dinç from Gazi University, Turkey. Being the last speaker of this session, I have two presentations for you. First is the conventional one, and the other one is a film about the house. My title is House, Housing and Architectural Education, 2 levels, 2 approaches. Maybe we can say 2 levels, 3 approaches. But they will be short. For the beginning, I know that housing is an important issue in architectural education. Shelters, huts, living units, single houses, groups of houses, apartments are among our topics which we deal with in our studios or the other courses. Bachelor says that home, from its cellar to its garret, is the first cosmos, universe of human being. I think this is not only valid for human beings, but also for all creatures who are moving. So I'm going to deal with 2 courses that I participate. The first one is design studio, and the second one is a graduate degree course. I will start with the graduate degree course. This is a very nice theoretical base, how we define architectural studio, what happens in an architectural design studio. Hülya Yürekli defines it very well, I think. A large variety of information and energy is fully absorbed and turned into designs that are totally unforeseeable. I think this definition is valid for graduate courses as well, in which we try to be a little bit more scientific, but what design and scientific methodology are usually very similar. So the first part of my presentation is about the graduate course that I lead, and the second one is a studio work. The graduate course's name is Design and Evaluation Problems in Architecture, and it deals with the real problems. It uses the used environments as a laboratory, how people live in it, how people perceive it, how people are happy in it. That's the usual, that's the general scope of the course. As mentioned in this symposium a lot, in Turkey there is a governmental body. It's called Housing Development Administration of Turkey. It deals with the housing problems of Turkish people. And as you see, they built nearly the same blocks all over the country, despite the opposition of lots of architects and city planners. And we try to discuss in our lesson if residents were very happy, if the owners of these houses were happy in living in them. So we were a group of 6, and each person focused on one site, one settlement, one Toki settlement in Ankara. This is how we studied. This is the course process for 14 weeks. It starts with the topic and content, the introductions. We had a guest who talked about Toki, what its strategies are, what she does
how to deal with the housing problem. And we had another guest who talked about Ankara and its response to housing issues. We did lots of literature surveys, literature reviews. We reviewed the empirical works which used multidimensional approaches in order to